Back in 2017, the city of Los Angeles and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power asked NREL to help them answer a really big question. What would it take to get LA's entire grid running on 100% renewable energy by 2045?
So all the transmission, the distribution, the resources, all of the investments that we need to take. And what are the job implications of that? What are the affordability implications of that? And what are the equity implications of that as well? And there are multiple different pathways to do that.
Now, the scale of that transition is immense. Almost 4 million residents live within the city limits. Pulling it off would make LADWP the largest municipal utility in the country to run on 100% renewable energy. But in 2021, a study called the LA 100 said it wasn't just possible to make the switch, it was possible to do it a whole decade sooner. So LADWP changed their goal. Instead of converting the grid by 2045, they do it by 2035.
Just a little over an hour ago, the City Council of Los Angeles took a monumentally important vote to set a goal for the Department of Water and Power, the largest municipal utility in America, to generate 100% clean, carbon-free energy by the year 2035.
As Director of Power System Planning at the utility, Jason Rondou and his team are tasked with figuring out how to deploy hundreds of gigawatts worth of wind, solar, and long-term storage to meet the city's growing energy demands.
What we found is that under any circumstance, under any pathway, under any strategy that we get to 100%, we are going to have a very significant effort in front of us, particularly over the next decade. And that means that our power demand is going to be growing significantly, probably over 50% increase in our demand over the next several decades.
That demand is coming from more than just buildings. It's also coming from the hundreds of thousands of EVs that will soon replace gas-powered vehicles on LA's streets. And if done right, the city's transition could create nearly 10,000 new jobs and bring in 60 to 90 billion of new investment for the city.
So it goes well beyond just what many would think of as the core important thing that we do of decarbonization and delivering reliable and affordable power.
This is With Great Power, a show about the people building the future grid today. I'm Brad Langley. Some people say utilities are slow to change, they don't innovate fast enough. And while it might not always seem like the most cutting-edge industry, there are lots of really smart people working really hard to make the grid cleaner, more reliable, and customer-centric. This week, I'm speaking with Jason Rondou, the Director of Power System Planning at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Jason has spent almost 2 decades working for the city, first on LA's transit system as a transportation engineering associate, and then on numerous clean energy programs at LADWP. He knows firsthand what's possible in the public sector, and he's determined to drive LA's energy transition forward, with equity in mind for some of the city's least fortunate residents.
It's exciting. It's exciting because this is a challenge that I think not many industries are faced with. It's a challenge where the benefits are substantial to the city. It's exciting because LA is in a position where we can lead, where the state of California is leading the country and the city of Los Angeles has expressed goals that go beyond the state of California's goals.
I talked with Jason about the policies and programs LADWP is using to clean up the city's grid and the ways that a public utility like theirs is uniquely suited to the challenge. We started our conversation with an update on LA's progress and how the grid will have to change to hit the utility's 100% clean energy goal by 2035.
So when we finished the LA 100 study in March of 2021, we found that the common areas of investment, no matter what we try to do, if we're trying to really maximize utility scale renewable resources at a really low cost, but maybe very far away from the city center, or if our strategy is to really try to maximize local resources and minimize the amount of new transmission that we would need to build, those are sort of bookends of different strategies that we could, try to achieve. What we found is that no matter what our strategy is, we need to dramatically increase our transmission reach. So that's just one piece of it. So to give you sort of a reference point, the city of LA is about 10% of the state of California when it comes to electric load, so 10% of California. But we have about 25% of the transmission capacity in the state. So we're very, very fortunate in that regard that that transmission reach that goes well beyond the city of Los Angeles, that reaches out into several western states in the country, allows us to really rapidly bring in new renewable resources. But even with LADWP having 25% of the state's transmission capacity, we still need more. We still need more transmission capacity. We also, under whatever strategy, and by the way, that's true even if our strategy is to really invest and maximize local resources. Now, on the flip side, if our strategy is to maximize really large-scale external resources, we still have to rapidly and significantly increase our local resources as well. So that's just on the transmission side. The distribution side as well. We need to build potentially up to 10 new stations, and those are distributing stations, over the next 20 or so years. And I think that's a little bit counterintuitive to folks that see decarbonization as potentially not requiring a lot of new infrastructure locally, and that's actually not the case. We have to have a more robust distribution system to be able to support electric vehicles. So we have adopted a power plan that aims to achieve 80% renewables by 2030, which will actually put us in the 90% range for carbon-free resources as well. At the end of 2021, we had approved the Red Cloud Wind project, which is a very significant contributor to our renewable portfolio standard, which will push us comfortably above 40% renewable energy for 2023. And we're actively negotiating additional utility-scale renewable projects as well. In addition to that, we are expanding our electric vehicle incentive portfolio. We have a very, very robust energy efficiency program, and we've talked about doubling that over the next 10 to 20 years. And we've really ramped up our demand response portfolio as well. So really across the board, we've had to take action on all of those common areas of investment for the decarbonization of our power system.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big believer in the role the customer can play in this as well. Obviously, the infrastructure is very important, but helping customers shift that load and have more thoughtful use of energy, especially during those real hot periods of time, goes a long way towards helping in those decarbonization efforts. So it's great to see you guys looking at both the infrastructure side and the customer side, because combining those two, I think, gets us to where we need to be faster.
On that note of customers, I think it's fair to say that we can't modernize our grid and we can't decarbonize our grid fully without the active engagement and the active participation of our customers, which means that all of our power planning activities, they have to be transparent and they have to be deeply engaged, in the community, with community-based organizations, with the environmental community, so that when we do have these power plans that show that it's much more than just renewable energy, it's actual infrastructure. It means that there's going to be significant construction, locally and outside of the city, that folks understand that. And we've done that historically with our power planning, even before the LA 100 study, where we've had stakeholders embedded in our process. And we really ramped that up with the LA 100 study, and we've continued that even after the LA 100 study. And what it's allowed us to do is, when we're planning our power system future, sitting down next to us in the room are these, leaders of various sectors within the city. We start to understand more deeply what they care about and what they're concerned about and what they would like to see. And then they have the opportunity to see more deeply what it takes to actually plan a power system and how interdependent the different sectors are.
So lots of other utilities are undertaking very similar initiatives to yours. One of the reasons I love doing this show is because we get to learn from each other. So are there any specific major challenges that have arisen, and maybe how your team is addressing those?
There's a number of challenges. There's a number of barriers and roadblocks when it comes to our power system future. Some of that is within our direct control. Some of that is not. One of the biggest challenges, again, is going to be staffing. We know that under any strategy, not only will it create significant amount of job opportunities within the city of Los Angeles, but it also is going to mean that we need to ramp up our own internal capabilities. We need to be able to pay wages that are competitive in the industry so that we can retain talent. We need to be able to train, new engineers and really turn them into the best engineers in this sector. And the way that we've approached this is to deploy or to develop and then deploy what we call the Integrated Human Resource Plan, which aims to understand all of the interdependencies within our power system, all of the different bottlenecks with respect to labor and with respect to, just ensuring that we've staffed appropriately and being able to hire them and recognize that in the utility industry, you very rarely can hire folks out of the, right out of the gate and have them working, and actually constructing things, the next day. In some cases, it will take years to have folks, go through journey programs and that sort of thing and train engineers to be able to get very, very productive. So we've, in a very proactive way, outlined the different staffing levels by year over the next 20 years to be able to understand what we need to do to be able to onboard folks. And what we've uncovered is that as a municipally owned utility, and every utility is going to have different challenges when it comes to hiring. Some will be more nimble, some will be less nimble. But what it's allowed us to do is to uncover, hey, there's a lot of different obstacles that we need to start to resolve and partner with different cities, sister city agencies to be able to onboard folks faster. And that's just on the hiring side. On the policy side, we know that there, in addition to state level policy and local policy that says we want to get to certain levels of renewable by certain dates, whether that's 2045, 2035, or any other date, that's the sort of end goal that we're trying to reach. That policy doesn't help bring down barriers. Some barriers that we've seen are on transmission. What we need to see streamline of transmission permitting, and we need to make sure that all of the different agencies that play a role in approving different transmission projects, whether they're upgrades or new transmission corridors, that there's much tighter coordination there. And I'll give you an anecdote which I think really solidifies how important this is. So you already know about LADWP's really rich transmission capacity. Well, with our last power plan, we said, here are different scenarios of reaching 100% renewable energy, and here are some interim goals. One interim goal was reaching 80% by 2030. Well, we looked at another scenario that reached 90% renewable by 2030, so 10% higher levels at the same year. And we said, we can't do the 90%. We can only do at most the 80%. And a lot of folks said, why? And we said, well, the cost of doing 80% and 90% were exactly the same. It's because gas prices have increased. And so folks would say, why in the world would you not do 90%? Why would you only do 80%? And that's because under status quo conditions with permitting and building new transmission, we won't be able to get enough transmission capacity to bring in 90%. And if that happens, not only have you procured that additional 10%, but now you're going to rely on natural gas. So you're actually going to be paying twice. So that really highlights how urgent it is to be able to make sure that we can really streamline transmission, because it means the difference between reaching higher levels of renewables sooner.
Coming back to your time at LADWP, you've worked your way through many different positions, and you've been part of a lot of projects and milestones, the increased share of wind and solar in the city's energy mix, the introduction of other sources of carbon-free power like geothermal and nuclear, and more recently, the approval of an $800 million project to convert the city's biggest natural gas power plant into a green hydrogen power plant. Is there a project that stands out to you as maybe best representing what LADWP is capable of accomplishing at its current pace?
We've got so many. We've got a massive power system reliability program where we have a distribution system that serves 4 million people in the city of Los Angeles that has been built out over the last 100 years. And that means that there's different vintages all across the city of, eras of infrastructure where we have a continuous replacement and upgrade cycle that we need to do. It's a reminder that as we try to decarbonize and as we add more, solar and wind and so on, we can't neglect the foundation. We need to build on a strong foundation. And what that really is the core of what we're trying to do is really maintain our distribution system. So continuing to make the investments there, continuing to make the investments on our transmission system, but also, as you mentioned, incorporating new wind and new solar. Across the board, we have just an endless amount of projects that are in some cases concurrently happening. Another one of them is at our Intermountain Power project out in Utah, which historically has provided very affordable, very reliable coal. But that affordable and reliable coal comes with very significant external costs, and in terms of carbon emissions. And so we're going through the process now of rebuilding that as a plant that will provide green hydrogen power in the future, and actually be a corridor to be able to bring in massive amounts of renewable energy. So when we have excess renewable energy and when we have really low cost renewable energy, we'll be able to produce green hydrogen and store it at Intermountain Power Project, which is actually located in Utah, and is another example of the reach that the city of LA is fortunate to have to be able to bring resources all across the western United States into the city and be able to power the city going forward. And that's one example. As you mentioned, we also have the example of the Scattergood Power Plant, which is, I think you had mentioned, was the largest, but it's one of 4 power plants that we have in the city of Los Angeles. And this is really an outcome of the LA100 study, which is, no matter what your strategy is to get to 100% renewable energy, you have to have reliable power. You have to have resilient power. And in the face of wildfires, in the face of high heat days, other unplanned extreme events, we need to be able to have some power to be able to provide in those events. And it might be less than 1% of the year that it actually happens. But, in 2035 and 2045, when we are at 80 and 90 and 100% renewable energy, we need to have something to back up, those renewable resources if we don't have the ability to get them home. And so the Scattergood Power Plant is one that is going through the environmental process now, and is a project that will be very critical for us, going forward.
I feel like utilities take some heat for not moving fast enough on these efforts, but then again, the response is it's got to be safe and it's got to be resilient. And so you do need to take a measured approach. You hit on that power plant under construction, but I'm curious, as an expert in distributed energy resources, how are you thinking about balancing grid resilience with distributed generation? Are there major components of a clean, resilient grid?
Oversimplifying it like this is probably going to make a few folks cringe, but there's the reality that we have to have local resources just from the resource perspective, but we also have to have, storage, local storage, whether that's, 4-hour storage or, the capability to shift load through demand response, time of use pricing, and, energy efficiency, be able to reduce loads at key times. So in order to maintain a reliable grid, we need to have that. Some major events will be very short duration. Some will be, an hour, a couple hours. We might lose, a unit, and that unit might, be, brought back on, or we might have an interruption to a transmission line, and we might be able to, we might have some redundancy. But there are some cases where we don't have that capability to easily replace imported power. One example of that is in 2019, there was a Saddle Ridge fire, which impacted our capability of bringing power into the city of Los Angeles. So it impacted all 3 of our transmission corridors, and we had to rely on local natural gas and local solar. And that event lasted, I think, I might be off a little bit, but I think it was roughly about 12 hours. In 2009, we had the Sayre fire, something similar to that, where all of our transmission capability was impacted. And then the 1994 Northridge earthquake, which some folks will remember in the city of LA, impacted that capability as well. The LADWP, we need to have the ability to withstand events like that. We're going to be we're going to be electrifying transportation and buildings, and more so than ever, we need to have reliable and resilient power. And to be able to do that, we need to have long duration capacity, and that's going to be in the form of long duration storage. It may be in the form of technologies that are still under development that may be available in the coming decades. But no matter what it is, we need to have local distributed resources and local capacity. So, that's going to be local solar storage, demand response, energy efficiency, but it's also going to be local capacity like, our project at Scattergood.
What impact does California's net zero goals have on system planning? Like, do you interact with the state regarding the net zero strategy? Are you working with like Southern California Edison, for instance, on different initiatives since you both serve parts of LA? Can you describe your work together kind of with, state commissions, regulators, and or other utilities in the region?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have, coordination with, obviously local stakeholders, but it's increasingly important for us to partner with other utilities, partner with the ISO, because a lot of these major projects that will really move the needle on decarbonization are not going to be undertaken by one utility alone. So what we recently did this past summer is we published our strategic transmission plan, which identifies potential new transmission corridors that may make sense for the city of Los Angeles to undertake on its own, but in some cases may be very ambitious and may have mutual benefit for us to partner with other utilities. So that was a major step for us to articulate some of that ambition in a public way. We are also going to continue our informal and formal engagement with other utilities as well. So, we've got sort of, quarterly meetings with other utilities that are, local as well, regular meetings with the ISO. But we also we do have the more formal requirements to submit our integrated resource planning plans to the state so that they can see what we're expecting to see with respect to load growth and what our plans are with respect to decarbonization and so on. So there's the combination of that formal engagement that we have with the state and other utilities, but also a lot of that is going to be, a little less formal. And when I say less formal, I still mean, actual engagement. But in terms of, outside of the regulatory requirements, we need to be really proactive and really work hand in hand with a lot of these utilities because there are opportunities for mutual benefit.
Yeah, as a public utility, LADWP is in a unique position to answer directly to the needs of the city first. And as you mentioned, you guys have this, far-reaching transmission network. In what way does that and California's energy ecosystem as a whole help LA's transition to net zero carbon-free electricity? And are there any areas for improvement or, things that you think maybe need to change or evolve to help you achieve those targets?
We're a municipally owned utility, so we are very well positioned to be responsive to the city of Los Angeles. So we are governed by our board and our city council and our mayor, and we are, very deeply engaged. And so, more so than I think many other utilities, we are well positioned. Another unique a feature of LADWP is we're vertically integrated. So we run our distribution system, our transmission system, and we own or control all of our generation resources. Either we own them and maintain them, or we have long-term power purchase agreements. So it allows us to, when the city of Los Angeles, through our council, through our mayor, through our board, identify goals for us to reach, we have to depend on less external factors to be able to put them into action. We can start to undertake transmission investments, generation investments, distribution investments to actually make that happen. But yes, even beyond that, there are certainly things that we need to see get done in order to make sure that we can do this effectively. And I mentioned one of them earlier, which is we need to have transmission come online a lot faster than it historically has. That's one of the big, challenges as well. Another challenge that we need to really face is there needs to be a look at, rate structures. So, if we're talking about $50 to $80 billion of investment over the next 20 years and beyond, and that's funded largely through electric rates, What we need to realize and what we need to communicate is under status quo rate design that is extraordinarily regressive. And policymakers need to understand, and that's where we have a role in communicating that. And this is, a really important part of our power planning efforts as well as our equity strategy study is to be able to communicate under status quo. Funding this grid transformation is very regressive. And policymakers need to understand that because, Los Angeles is extraordinarily diverse from many perspectives. One of those perspectives is we have extraordinary wealth in the city, but we also have a housing crisis. We also have, potentially up to 50% of our city is considered a disadvantaged community. And we have a very large portion of the city which is underserved. And so we need to understand and we need to communicate that status quo really needs to be looked at, and we need to consider changes to the way that we charge customers for electricity.
What are the benefits of LADWP achieving 100% renewable energy by 2035? What's the impact going to be on the customers, whether residential, commercial, or industrial?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the benefits are going to be very obvious, and some of them maybe not so obvious. Of course, decarbonizing the grid comes with a reduction in carbon, and so there's the climate benefit of that. But the reality is that the city of Los Angeles is, again, 10% of the state. And so we alone are not going to solve the climate crisis. And so that gets back to the importance of us doing it right. If we're going to lead, we need to lead in a way that, we execute this, reliably, affordably, and equitably. So in addition to the carbon reduction benefits, the local air quality improvements, and as everybody knows, Los Angeles is very car dependent. And so we have a huge opportunity to reduce local air quality emissions, which will have very clear health benefits. And the LA 100 study articulated that. And that's something that we're building on with future power plans as well in our equity strategy study. There's also going to be thousands of jobs created as part of this. A lot of those jobs will be directly related to the work that we do. Some of those jobs will be created within the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. There will be an increasing amount of customer opportunities. So participating in energy efficiency programs, electric vehicle rebates, et cetera. We've got a very significant portfolio, and that portfolio of programs has to grow. So there'll be opportunities there as well.
When you look back on your career, what impact do you hope to have on the energy industry?
It would be fantastic to be able to look back in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years and show that we have truly done this right, and we have really brought to light a lot of the things that folks have not seen in the past, which is we have a role and an opportunity to really provide those jobs, to identify inequities and rectify those, and provide suites of programs that reach all customers and generally just improve the lives of the folks that live in the city of Los Angeles, and set an example for other utilities outside of the city of Los Angeles to where they can learn from the work that we've done. I think that would be obviously, I think no secret, that would be a great thing to see.
So last question for you, and I hope you think it's a fun one. We call this show With Great Power, which is a nod to the energy industry. It's also a famous Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. What superpower do you bring to the energy transition?
Persistence, but also, patience and collaboration. So I say that because a lot of the challenges that we have to get done will take a long time to get them done, and not losing sight of the goals that we have, being persistent and pushing forward, especially when you're talking about industries like utility industries, which are extraordinarily complex, have significant amount of interdependencies. being able to be patient enough to understand that and understand the challenges, but also persistent enough to make sure that you push forward and that you can continuously collaborate with other folks. So I'm sure that was a lot more wordy than you were probably looking for, but I think that's probably the best that you're going to get from me right now.
Jason, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your perspective and giving us this time. Thank you.
All right, Brad. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Jason Rondou is the Director of Power System Planning at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. With Great Power is produced by GridX in partnership with Postscript Media. Delivering on the clean energy future is complex. GridX exists to simplify the journey. GridX is the enterprise rate platform that modern utilities rely on to usher in our clean energy future. We design and implement emerging rate structures, and we increase consumer investment in clean energy, all while managing the complex billing needs of a distributed grid. Our production team includes Aaron Hardick, Stephen Lacey, Dalvin Abawaji, and Camille Stennis, all from Postscript Media. The original theme song and mixing came from Sean Marquand. The GridX production team includes Jenny Barber and me, Brad Langley. If this show is providing value for you, and we really hope it is, please help us spread the word. You can rate or review us at Apple and Spotify, or you can share a link with a friend, colleague, or the energy nerd in your life. Thanks for listening. I'm Brad Langley.